We do have tornado warnings, though, Lee.
Today?
Today.
Oh, I didn't know that.
All over this area.
Is it common to have tornadoes up there?
It does happen.
When I was young, I was about 15, about how old I was, my earliest memories of doing things in the oil fields. Our rigs then were, by today's standards, poor boy rigs. No blowout preventers, anything. And the way you found out if you had anything is when it came to see you. So you had to be careful where you walked and where you stepped, and everything was dirty, and everything had oil on it. And when you got an oil well, you just let it blow out, and then you'd run like heck. And it blew out over you and your cars and everything else.
Our history, meaning, of course, UT Austin, is very much intertwined, very closely related to the history of oil production in Texas. You almost can't separate them.
Texas, when it was first constituted as a state, it was here primarily for ranching and the cattle drives and things like that, and then a little bit of farming, a little bit of timber in East Texas. It was more or less a rural agrarian society. The state legislature set aside lands from which income the universities could be funded. They didn't much know that there would be oil under that land, so it was a very fortuitous thing. But Spindletop in 1901 and then East Texas in 1929 changed everything.
In 1901, shortly after Spindletop, my grandfather went to Beaumont area where the Spindletop discovery had been made, and he caught the oil bug at Spindletop. So the family was changed forever. There were literally tens of thousands of people that were in Beaumont within days after that well came in just to watch it. No one had ever seen anything like that in the Western world. There was no knowledge of what reservoir engineering was or how these things worked. And so the wells were literally right next to each other. You could walk from one drilling platform to another.
It was very much a Wildcat era to start with. There was a lot of luck involved. There was a lot of trial and error involved. People would go broke and then they'd start over and so forth. You have to admire them for their tenacity and their guts and their risk-taking.
There was no engineering involved, just praying. A large amount of oil was wasted all over the world.
When you just let it flow, you often only get 10% of the oil or 20% of the oil, and you leave the rest behind.
Where does the oil exist, and how do I locate it better? The engineering side came about to solve those type of problems.
In 1930, the Department of Petroleum Engineering was created at the University of Texas.
I think the school started up because there was a terrible need for engineering of petroleum and how to produce it safely and more effectively.
Students have done everything from become CEOs of companies to become world-class researchers to forming their own companies.
After the department was started, we produced a lot of outstanding students. We also produced a lot of outstanding professors. Frederick Plummer was, of course, the first chairman, and he wrote the first petroleum production textbook. And it follows through the years. We've had professors that knew a lot about chemistry. They knew a lot about ways to measure how chemicals would behave in reservoirs, and all sorts of associated technology.
In 1941, I came to the University of Texas. My dad had nothing but a high school degree. He really didn't believe in college degrees, so he said, you get in there, get your basic degree, petroleum engineering, and then come out. And that's what I did. My first year at the University of Texas was HELL, and scared me to death. These guys were so smart. And so as an average boy coming to university, I had to work like heck. At that time, this was World War II. You had to agree to go constantly, no summer vacation, nothing, just constantly for 3 years to get your degree. And the minute you finish, you had to hustle overseas, which I did.
East Texas oil, without much exaggeration, was the source that won World War II for the Allies.
Hitler was stymied in many areas by lack of petroleum, because Germany didn't have any oil.
They put the oil in pipelines and took it to Houston and put it on ships. And then the ships went up to refineries in Philadelphia. Well, there's a big target for U-boats. So there was a pipeline constructed from East Texas to Philadelphia called the Big Inch. Large pipeline, the largest pipeline of its era. And so then the oil could go to Philadelphia, be refined, and directly to World War II.
I went directly from Austin to Germany, and the minute I landed, the U.S. Army said, "Good, we've been looking for a petroleum engineer that knew all the answers. We don't have any answers." And I just graduated from Texas. I didn't know if I had any answers, but I was immediately assigned to handle the petroleum products from the United States to General Patton, and that was a busy, busy job. We would unload the U.S. tankers of oil and put them into 5-gallon cans because they had no pipelines over there. And we had to build the plants to make the cans. We had to figure out the trucks and how many. And there was no doubt about it that Mr. Hitler had plans of capturing the United States and using all of our oil in his different needs, because the first bunker I came to was marked for East Texas oil.
Texas virtually supplied all the oil to the Allied effort.
We had a huge advantage there because we produced a lot of oil in a location that was relatively secure. In fact, who knows, we might have lost the war if it had not been for that advantage.
During wartime, academic environments were critical, and they continued on.
People stepped up to the plate. They ramped it up when they needed to, and they did it in an amazingly short period of time.
Since the war, changes in petroleum engineering have been unbelievable due to innovation and techniques that were developed, a lot of them here at the university.
It was really after the war and that retention of knowledge in the universities and in the companies that were able to rapidly train a lot of people to fuel the manpower that you had in this new age that we're in.
By the 1950s, the level of scientific understanding finally reached the point where you could produce large quantities of inexpensive energy. And this department had a lot to do with that.
We've always been blessed with good faculty. Carl Gatlin, who wrote the first drilling textbook, and then through Kermit Brown, very famous in production area, up through Ben Cottle, who was a contemporary of mine, who basically worked on miscible fluids and enhanced oil recovery as well as streamline modeling. All these folks put us on the map.
Another way the research is valuable is a good bit of that ends up in the textbooks and other kinds of books. And this faculty has produced probably more than any other petroleum engineering department in the United States.
Texas continued to play a big role in the energy needs of the world. In those days, the idea behind getting into the oil business was largely wealth. It was like a gold rush.
I'm a rich one. I'm a rich boy. Me, I'm gonna have more money than you ever thought you could have.
Texas oilmen were definitely mythologized. Both with respect to the entertainment business, the motion pictures, and of course later TV. You know, it probably was deserved because some of those characters were definitely larger than life.
They always did things in a big way, and it was always boom or bust. It was always broke on Monday and a millionaire on Friday. And the lore and the myths, all of those things had some germ of truth.
I remember as a youth growing up in Arizona, when the kids would come from Texas, they were always braggarts. They talked about everything being bigger in Texas and better in Texas and things like that. So the myth permeated the whole state.
All I ever knew about oilmen was that they were cowboys and they had a lot of money, but I never considered myself that old school Western wildcatter who was going out there looking for oil. But essentially, we're all still that. We just put on nicer clothes and we try to act like we're executives.
The wildcatter has been portrayed as kind of a flamboyant, heavy drinker, cigar smoker, not caring too much about anything, which is absolutely wrong. There were some very colorful characters, no question about it. But the Wildcatters that I've known in my life, the vast majority of them, the finest people you'll ever know. They're used to adversity, they're used to risk-taking, and they always think they're going to succeed.
When are you going to start in the hole with the directional tools?
As soon as the pressure testing is done.
Oh, really? Right away? And then maybe drill out tonight around anywhere from 8 to 10 o'clock?
Yep.
So we're probably, the TD, we're probably, what, 3 days, 4 days at the most?
Yeah.
All right.
I was honestly going to be a doctor. My dad and mom owned a hardware store in the little town that we grew up in, Kaufman, Texas. And Dad decided to sell the hardware store when I was a junior in high school, and he went to work in the oil field. And so he sat rigs, was a rig foreman, and through that exposure to him, he came home one day and said, "You need to go to engineering school." I was always good in math and science and all those things in high school. And so I decided to try UT. Newton Energy Partners is an idea that started when my son was actually at UT.
The idea started years ago. We had a place along the coast in Texas where we'd go fishing. You know, on Saturday or Sunday mornings, we'd be out wade fishing, and this topic continually came up. There was always some reason why the timing wasn't right. I needed to get trained up a little bit, but around September 2010, he called me and said, "You know, are you really serious about doing this with me?" And I said, "Absolutely."
We bought 5 fields in Alberta province. The majority of the activity that we have going on right now is in the Leduc Woodbend Field. The Leduc Woodbend Field is the discovery field for the province of Alberta. It's what started the oil business in Alberta. The field is 65 years old this year. It's produced 300 or 400 million barrels, and we are focused on the original reservoirs in this field. We're focused on finding those pockets of oil and gas that were left behind or that had been swept into position that they're in by fluid movements.
Our experiences at UT is something that we depend on quite a bit. I'm constantly going back and looking at old textbooks. The Petroleum Department instills in you an ability to kind of look at the big picture and say, okay, what's my problem and what do I have and how do I solve it?
We've had professors that were famous in something called enhanced oil recovery, which was recovering the last little bit of oil out of a reservoir. The diversity of skills and technologies required to do that is enormous.
We face quite a few challenges up here. Weather, obviously, is one of our biggest factors.
You would think the wintertime, when it can get -30, -40 up here, would be the most difficult time. You can't expose your skin, can't be outside, your skin will freeze. But the wintertime is really not the difficult time to operate. Everything on the ground is hard. You can move around, you can move equipment, you can drill. What begins to be a problem is when it starts to thaw out. It's called breakup up here, and it's referred to after when the ice in the river begins to break up. It begins to get very, very muddy. If it's been a very big snow season, which we had this year, you'll have some flooding issues. You'll have locations that you want to drill that are 6 or 8 inches underwater.
So you guys been getting a lot of rain up here?
Lots of rain.
Yeah, the rig was supposed to move in, what, yesterday?
Yeah.
And we haven't been able to get on that location because of the weather?
It's too
Yeah,
soft.
just starting to
Too
dry.
nasty?
Too nasty. Yeah. Lots of mud.
A lot of the leases are pretty bad. We don't go into them till later in the day or the next day actually, just because of the moisture.
For about a month or two during breakup, which starts in February, March, it normally ends late April, May, work basically shuts down.
We are, honestly, as far as our drilling program goes, we're about 2, maybe 3 months behind where I wanted to be. It is concerning. The process has just gotten so much more competitive. Technology is very expensive, and we're having to spend the money on that technology. A lot of people don't understand that. We put at risk millions and millions of dollars every day to find oil and gas, not knowing if we'll find it, not knowing what we'll be paid for it if we do find it. So the business uncertainty, I think, is a little more extreme now than perhaps in the past.
What we find today is the industry is much more technically focused than it was maybe 40 or 50 years ago. And UT is equipping the students really, I think, for the future needs of our industry.
Hi, Dr. Lake.
Catherine, what can I do for you?
I was just wondering, is it important to get an internship?
Yeah, I think it's very important to get an internship. When you come back to school, you actually see the reasons for some of the things that you were doing in the field. Is your family in the oil business?
No, they're not.
Okay.
So this is all really new to me. I initially started off in biomedical engineering, but that didn't exactly hook me the way I was hoping it would. And I talked to a few friends who were majoring in petroleum engineering at UT, and the way they spoke about it, it just got me excited. My courses at UT are filled with really diverse sets of people. And the one thing I like about petroleum engineering is that it's not necessarily just math and science. It really brings in a lot of different aspects of learning. It brings in economics, politics, and it just incorporates all of that into something that's really interesting and really exciting. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about it and starting my career.
Morning.
Good morning. Hi. Hey, Catherine. So this is your first time at a drilling rig? Okay.
In petroleum engineering, internships are key. That's the way you get a job. That's the way you prove yourself.
Typically, we'll drill a well between 10 and 20 days.
Okay. It's kind of proof that you're going to be a hard worker, that you are really interested in the field. So you're a drilling engineer and you graduated from UT?
Yes.
What is your job?
I plan the wells, try to find a way to drill them efficiently, and then I watch over 3 different rigs.
What you learn in the classroom is so different from what you learn out in the field. And that's the only way that you can really learn everything. So what are they doing right now? They're just about to drill the horizontal?
No, so we're going to start building our curve, so we're going to start the deviation, so that way we can get it landed and then drill our target.
As a resource-based industry, there's periods in which you've got extremely high demand and then others which are just the opposite of that. We're obviously in an upturn right now, and there's a large amount of projects that are in desperate need of quality people.
This idea, which I was told when I was studying petroleum engineering, that we were running out of oil and there was no sense studying it, those comments have been going on for a long time, and we keep finding new and more oil and better ways to develop it.
Why don't you give us a run through of locations and where we're at, and then where we have service leases and where we're still working on that.
Okay, so the first well we drilled was the 16 of 8 well here.
Yep.
We drilled that roughly 2 weeks ago. Finished on that location and moved up here to the 10 of 5 location. Basically what I've been doing for the last, well, I guess 6-7 months is pick drilling locations. We're trying to make sure we've got enough drilling locations in the queue to keep these rigs busy, because once you lose a rig, it's pretty difficult to get it back. There's just so many operators out here that want to drill wells. You know, one of the things that's really exciting for us and nerve-wracking for us is finding out, you know, were we correct or not? Is the oil there that we thought was there?
I do feel a sense of urgency to make this company successful, not just for our benefit, but for the benefit of our employees, for the benefit of the family.
With the weather last night, we did lose both facilities at 1 and 2:30 in the morning. I'm not exactly sure the full extent of the damages. We do have one well down waiting for a service call. Fuses are popped.
Far and away, the clearest trend that's occurring in our industry today is recovery of these old, depleted reservoirs. In 1985, when I got out of school, in no form or fashion were you able to produce oil or gas out of these reservoirs.
Welcome to Petroleum Engineering 323K. This is reservoir engineering, primary recovery. Since I've been here, we've been a specialist in enhanced oil recovery. We've always been famous for that, but in the last few years, we are ground zero.
The second trend that's occurring is the production of oil and gas out of shale and unconventional reservoirs.
Conventional oil, the easy oil, may be getting close to its peak, although there's still a lot of it. It's going to last for a long time. Our challenge then is, how are we going to sustain such large volumes of energy production?
Today, we're short on engineers, petroleum engineers especially, all over the world. And so today, the University of Texas is simply needed so badly. to provide those engineers and to provide new ideas and new technology.
How big is the Eagle Ford Shale exactly?
Right now, EOG has wells over like 120-mile distance.
When I'm in the field, I mostly travel around with a pumper or an artificial lift guy, and he will walk me around and show me the different parts of the machinery and the different processes that go on. Open this. Today we used an echometer gun to shoot a fluid level test. You fire it up with pressure and you shoot an acoustic wave down into the well, and that helps you determine the fluid level inside the well. Is it ready to be shot?
Yeah, it's ready.
1545, is that right? The level wasn't right at where we wanted it to be, and so I think whoever the engineer is that's assigned to that well will look at it and see what changes need to be made to optimize production. There's so many places where something might go wrong, so for them to let me just watch over a little bit was really exciting.
So we're expecting 1,730 meters.
Yep.
Puts us to bottom. That's perfect.
Okay, tell me what you got. Where are we?
If all goes well, all of these locations will get drilled this year. So everything in green.
Solid green.
Solid green is a booked location.
Okay. So I'm going to say 414, 620. So we should roughly gain another 1 million barrels. Gross from our second quarter activity. So that's a home run. We've done very well there. Very exciting. Good. Excellent. Mitchell got a very, very good education at UT in the Petroleum Engineering Department. He came out of UT with the ability to start work the next day. This industry is going to be around for a very long time. And so we're always going to need more and more bright, innovative, entrepreneurial kids to go into petroleum engineering.
The industry has been in a state of evolution for the last 50 years, and the ability to evaluate and solve problems at a very high technical level is critically important to what we do as an organization. We do quite a bit of hiring from UT-PGE. I believe it represents kind of our highest percentage in terms of new hires on an annual basis.
You had Dr. Lake.
So who used punch cards with Dr. Lake?
No.
We have had a real dearth of new, really motivated engineers. I mean, historically, those people would go to different industries, but for the first time, I'm seeing some of the brightest minds believing that petroleum engineering is a cool and innovative career that's got longevity to it.
The exploration for oil and gas is a huge treasure hunt. I mean, it is fun.
It is slightly different, obviously, now. We have a little bit more information before we go off and start sticking holes in the ground. But at the end of the day, you never know, no matter what anybody says, you never know until you actually stick a hole in the ground. So in that sense, you still consider yourself a cowboy, and I like being that cowboy.
The Wildcatter today is a different type of person in the tools that they have. I don't think the personality is any different, because these are still people that are willing to take extraordinary risk.
As a petroleum engineer, it's a different life. You feel like you're needed, and you feel like you can provide an answer to a lot of today's problems in the world. And energy certainly is right on top of the table, and it may not be oil and gas. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to need engineers to do it. Keep them coming.